So we are super excited tonight to have a great celebration tonight, and we want to kick it off with a bang by celebrating some of the people who helped bring us where we're at in broadband today. And we are incredibly fortunate tonight to have with us a leader who has been at the forefront of some of the most impactful decisions of our time. As House Majority Whip, Congressman James Clyburn is the third-ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives and also serves, importantly, as chair of the House Rural Broadband Task Force. Not only was his presidential endorsement credited with nearly single-handedly changing the trajectory of the presidential race in 2020, but his development of the Accessible, Affordable Internet for All Act changed the trajectory of the infrastructure bill itself. His legislation incorporated a bold broadband vision and laid out a critical set of challenges, principles, and goals, things that every state, local policymaker, every community leader, and every broadband provider could embrace and evangelize. And he helped build the critical momentum necessary to ensure broadband became a foundational pillar of the historic Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So we're going to have a fireside chat, and our moderator for this fireside chat is Maura Corbett, who is CEO and founder of the Glen Group. She leads Glen Group's award-winning communications, media, and public affairs coalition building team. She is on the board for Public Knowledge, who we are pleased to say came out in force tonight, like so many other allies. So help us celebrate. Please join me in welcoming House Majority Whip James Clyburn and Maura Corbett.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I said to the congressman, I'm from New Jersey, so I'll talk too fast, and he kindly said he would slow it down, and we'll end up, I think, in the right place so he can get back for votes. But we are, I feel like I'm standing here with a rock star. So we are delighted that you're here, at such an interesting time in our history. You've been on the front lines of history, and many note the division in our country today, and you've been active in so many important moments in our history. We would be remiss if we didn't ask for your thoughts about where we are now and what lessons might apply to this moment.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And let me thank the Institute for having me. And there are two people here. Where's Ralph? Ralph Everett, thank you so much for being here. And Michael Copps. And my daughter, Mignon, who really has educated me on these issues, was tutored and walked through her confirmation for the FCC by Ralph Everett, who is also from South Carolina, little town of Orangeburg. And once she got to the commission, Michael Copps took over and turned her into a pretty good commissioner. But I give y'all something good to work with. Thank you. And she was to be here with me, but she's a bit under the weather. You know, I just left the White House for a signing of the postal reform bill. And all of us have been hearing what's been going on at the post office for the last several years. And one of the big things is back in 2006, while nobody was watching, something got put into the postal bill that required the Postal Service to pay forward its pension by 75 years. And so I asked some business people not long ago, how many of you would be in business if you had to pay forward your pension by 75 years? Not a single hand went up. So what has been happening for several years now, almost 2 decades, has been these little things, wedges, being placed in everything. Is in legislation, is in the things that we do, just things to pit people against each other. And you know, people are just angry with the Postal Service. And the Postal Service got not much to do with it. They got to adhere to what the law is. And so that is what's going on in the country today. And prior to that, I was over at the Ronald Reagan building under the sponsorship of a former member who was a Republican from Florida, Rooney. He's no longer a member, but he asked me to be a part of a panel dealing with this question, what we can do to deal with this issue. Well, part of it is one group seemed to be creating wedges, and then we've turned everything, it's a profit motive that's gotten into everything. The Postal Service is what it is. Postal Service. It's not the Postal Corporation. It's in the Constitution of the United States to provide a service of connecting communities. That's what it's all about. Bring us all the communities together, rural and urban, everything, so that we can fulfill that motto, our nation's motto, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And so we've lost sight of that. And this is not the first time we've lost sight of that. One of the people that I used to study a lot, I don't study much anymore, but I quoted him a lot, was Alexis de Tocqueville, who came to this country back in the 1830s and wrote a two-volume work that he called Democracy in America. De Tocqueville wrote in those books one little passage that I sort of refer to a lot, that America's greatness is not because it's more enlightened than any other nation, but rather because it has always been able to repair its faults. And I want you to think about that. The greatness of this country rests upon our ability to repair our faults. COVID-19 exposed a big, big fault line in this country, and to repair a lot of that fault required that we do something about internet services. It's the reason I created the Rural Broadband Task Force to bring together about 20 Congress people that had need for telemedicine, telehealth, whatever you may call it. The need, I hadn't heard this term before now, but telelearning or remote learning, whatever it is, to deal with that. Now, the way you get things done is to apply whatever it is you're doing to people's experiences. I've always said, when I wrote my memoirs, I called it Blessed Experiences. And I said in the introduction of that book that all of my experiences have not been pleasant, but I've considered all of them to be blessings. And one of the things we have to learn that these experiences, if you can relate to people's everyday experiences, you can get them to move on a subject. And when people saw that the information highway, the internet, needed to be treated the same way we treat the interstate highway, we were able to get them to deal with it. That's how we got the $65 billion in every state in this nation, if they do just a little bit at the state level. If they are creative in the private sector, that $65 billion will allow us to build out the internet in every home, every business within 4 to 5 years. And we can do it. But that's what we had to do, get people to say, here is what you're experiencing, and here is how we can resolve that, solve it. My late wife suffered with diabetes for the last 25 years of her life, and 4 shots a day. So I got educated to this. with two experiences. One was her doctor calling me, asking me to stop by his office. I didn't know him, but this is when we first started dealing with the Affordable Care Act. And so he wanted me to see something. And I went by his office. Emily was not there. I went alone. I thought we were going to just talk about legislating. But he wanted me to see what telemedicine could do. And I watched him sit at his desk and diagnose a person with diabetes 136 miles away. This gentleman with his eyes to a monitor, and this doctor telling me, looking at his eyes, everything that was wrong. He said, he doesn't know it yet, but he's got diabetes. We'll inform him when this test is over. That convinced me of the value of telemedicine, of bringing people together. The second experience was this. One day, a brother of mine, Larry Bailey, who is the accountant for the Williams sisters. And Larry and I are pretty good buddies. We play golf together a lot. He said to me, I have a problem. Serena has to play in the Family Circle Cup, and you all have got this boycott down there with the Confederate battle flag. She doesn't want to violate this boycott, but if she doesn't fulfill her responsibilities under her contract, she will break the contract and lose millions. Can you help me? I said, yes, I can help you, but it's going to cost you. So he said, well, what is it going to cost me? I told him, here's what I would like you to do. Get Serena to buy some laptops for me. I want to put laptops in some of my rural schools. And what I would like for you to do is buy me laptops for Scotch Branch High School in Summerton, South Carolina, where Brown v. Board of Education got started. So he said to me, we can't buy laptops for everybody in the school. I said, no, I'm not going to ask you to do that. But how about get about 100? And let me put them in the library so they can check these laptops out, just like they check out books. He said, we might be able to do that. Is that all? I said, no. I says, I want 100 tickets to the tournament because, Summerton is just an hour and a half away from Charleston. So I want 100 tickets because these kids, I want to sponsor a field trip for them to go to the tournament. They would love to be at I didn't know at the time. A lot of students had never been to Charleston. So he said, okay, we'll do that. I thought I had done something. I called the superintendent of the school. I said, Rose, her name's Rose Wilder. I said, Rose, I got some great news for you. She says, what's that? And I told her what I had done. She said, well, what do you want me to do with these laptops? I said, I want you to put them in the library, let the kids check them out, and they can bring them back just like they bring books back. She said, well, what are they going to do with the laptop when they get home? I said, what are you talking about? She said, my kids are not connected to the internet. So laptops are going to do us any good. Those two experiences were what caused me to be as relentless as I was. And when they were telling me that we couldn't do this, we couldn't, then I sicked Seth on them. And then Seth would go out and explain to them how they could do it. And we got it done. So I tell people all the time, one of the reasons we have these divisions is that we have not spent enough time appealing to people on a more personal level, something they can live with, something they can identify with, and I think we can get to a better place. Now, the reason I don't talk fast, but I do talk
You talk
long.
well. I have so many questions. Yeah. You pretty much did my work for me.
I'm trying to be helpful.
But you were being very helpful. You talk about things that divide us. It is shocking to me still, having worked on this for my whole career, that the idea of high-speed, reliable broadband is something that divides people. Do you think there are heroes all around this room who have worked on the digital divide for their whole careers? How do we know this time is going to stick? Where are we going to be in 5 years? $42 billion is a lot of money. There's a lot of reason to hope, but you've seen so much. Where do you see us in 5 years?
Oh, in 5 years, I think this is going to be a successful venture, because most states, a little state like South Carolina, for instance, on January 6th last year, when I was snatched out of the chamber, taken to the so-called undisclosed location, the very first phone call I got was from the governor of South Carolina. McMaster was the very first governor in the country to endorse Donald Trump. So I'll let you know where he is on the political spectrum. But he called me. He says, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, Governor, I'm fine." He said, "Well, I just want to be sure you're all right, but I also want you to know that I'm getting ready to do the State of the State address, and I'm going to be asking for a significant amount of dollars for your broadband program." That's the way he said it. And he did. And he had already done a lot. And when we passed this bill, he says, every residence, every business in this state, we are going to have connected in 3 to 4 years. Now, that's because along the way, I was able to appeal to him on a personal level. And not because of me or my late wife, no. Get him to see how he could have kept his schools open. Explain to him what COVID-19 had really done and how we could get testing done if we had the internet spread throughout rural South Carolina. Just not talking to him about what a good thing this was. But I said to him, as I said to a lot of people, if you look at what made the big difference in rural America in the 20th century, it was electricity. It was electricity. And I shared with the governor a little testimony that came from a Tennessee church when the farmer went to church one night and he said, "Brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. The greatest thing on earth is to have the love of God in your heart. But the next greatest thing is to have electricity in your house." Right. That's what that farmer said in church. That was his testimony. And I shared with the governor and others, the next greatest thing, in my opinion, is to have the internet in every home. And when you can show people the benefit, it was laborious, time-consuming, but it was not hard. The moment people saw what it would do to change the lives of people in their communities. And that's just what we have to do. And you can do that. You don't have to be disagreeable to do that. I think you can just, I study all my members. I look at their backgrounds, try to find out who their children are, where they go to school, and all that kind of stuff. And when you're talking to a member and you're asking for a vote, my job is to get the votes. The speaker will decide what comes to the floor. The leader will decide when it's voted on, and then it comes to me to get the 218 votes as necessary. If you're going to get the 218 votes, you got to know the people you're asking to vote for it. So I try to find out things about people. That nothing makes a person more proud to say to him, "Where is Janet going to school? She's going to graduate from high school this year. Where is she going to school?" These kinds of things, just personalized things, so that people can identify the conversation, and you do well. I don't have a whole lot of problem getting votes, but a lot of people just tell me flat out no. But you can get over no.
I mean, really what you're talking about and what we're celebrating tonight is building community.
Building
There's
community.
nobody better at it than you.
Well, I've had some luck, but I've had a lot of friends along the way. Yeah. Ralph was the first African American to ever serve the head of staff on the Senate side. Why let him get all that experience if I'm not going to get something from him? Yeah. Both of these guys worked with Fritz Hollins, who taught me how to do earmarks. Yeah.
One more question on community, and I want to be mindful of your
Sure.
time. We talk a lot about rural communities. Do you see much difference in the challenges, besides the physical ones, in getting people online in rural communities versus urban?
No.
Urban, we sometimes forget that part. We focus so much on rural,
Absolutely.
which is worthy, but it's not the only.
The day I convinced, you may remember when we first started the infrastructure discussion some years ago, we were talking about doing an infrastructure bill. We had infrastructure week every week for about 4 years, and never got infrastructure done. And so finally, in maybe might have been the third year of the previous administration, we were getting ready to have this big infrastructure meeting over at the White House. And so we were meeting to get ready for that meeting, the meeting before the meeting. And I said to Nancy Pelosi, I said, Nancy, we have got, as I've been reading all this stuff, about doing traditional infrastructure. They kept using that word. I said, there's nothing traditional about the internet, but there's nothing more infrastructure than the internet. And we've got to treat broadband the same way, like I said, the interstate highway, just like we treat the information highway, the same way we treat the interstate highway. She says, okay, when we get to the meeting, and it comes my time to speak, these round robins work this way. The president speaks, then he goes to the speaker, then it goes to the leader of the Senate, then over to the leader of the House, and you do a round robin. So when the president finished speaking, she said, when he comes to me, I'm going to yield to you to make the argument. And so she did. In the middle of my argument, Schumer didn't wait for it. It was time to go back to him, but he spoke up. And he said at that time, he says 25% of the kids in New York City are not on the internet. They go down to the local library. They sit on the steps of the library to do their homework. Or they go to fast food places to do their homework. They're not connected. 25% in New York City. So when you think about this problem, it is absolutely no different in these inner cities than it is in rural communities. Now, there's a difference in solving it because you can run fiber from the first floor all the way up to the 35th floor. But when you start running fiber from one house 35 miles down the road, you got another problem. So to solve the problem is much more expensive proposition than it is than is present. I mean, I suspect that in some urban areas, there's as much disconnect as you find in rural communities. You can solve it easier in urban areas than in rural. That's why, though fiber may be the optimal, we got to have a smorgasbord approach because there are a lot of places you're not going to be able to get fiber done anytime soon. which means you got to have a smorgasbord approach to it.
Do we have time for one more,
Is
or
that
do you need
okay,
to?
Seth? Am I straight on that? I'm doing good?
One more? Okay.
They haven't called the vote yet, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry? Okay.
One thing I always wonder, it took 30 years and a pandemic to get internet treated as infrastructure. What do you think would have happened had we not had COVID-15? Would we have been fighting this forever?
No, I don't think so. It might have taken longer. We may have been equipped with more on-time experiences because of what I was experienced with the internet. I mean, what happened with our school children. We've got kids in South Carolina that's lost more than a year of school. And it's unfair for my grandkids to be able to stay connected to education because they got the internet. And their schoolmates going to get left behind because they did not have the internet. That I think making this case helped a whole lot. It helped a whole lot for people to see the value of telehealth.
Yes.
Because that touches a lot of people. So I think it would take longer to get to, but I think we would have eventually done it. But certainly, you hate to think of a pandemic as being helpful, but it highlighted how serious this problem really is. And so I think it would have taken some time to get there. But I think that the thing we've got to get to is learning our value to each other. That's what we've got to learn. This year, all of you remember in the last the gubernatorial election over in Virginia highlighted this whole critical race theory thing that had floated out here, and people are playing around with it. I was invited to open up Black History Month at Gonzaga High School. I don't know if anybody is in here, may have been there that day, because when I got there that day, I was shocked to see how many parents were there. And I'm saying, there's a lot of parents here, but then I figured out immediately what it was. They wanted to see what this black congressman was going to say about on Black History Month. I figured that's what it was. But I said to them that day, something that has caught on around the country, and I hear from people all the time about it. I decided not to avoid that issue because I don't think you solve problems by pretending they don't exist. If you want to solve a problem, you got to first admit that you got the problem. And then you try to open up lines of communications within which you try to create a climate that will allow you to solve the problem. So what I said to them, I said, I used to teach at the high school level. I never taught theory. I taught facts, historical facts. And I said to them, it is an historical facts. Now, I always have a problem rather how to deal with a and an when you're saying history. It's a fact that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. But it's also a fact that Thomas Edison could not get the light bulb to work properly. He could get it to come on, but it would overheat and would go out. And then somebody approached Thomas Edison up there in New Jersey.
Thank you. I was going to point that out. Thank you very much.
And says, Mr. Edison, there's a guy up there in Massachusetts who has invented something called a filament. I believe that if you go up there and talk to him, you might be able to get him to allow his filament to be used in your light bulb, and you can get it to work. So Thomas Edison went up to Massachusetts and met with a guy named Louis Latimer, the son of former slaves. His parents had escaped from slavery. Living in Massachusetts, brilliant genius who had invented this filament. And sure enough, his filament made Thomas Edison's light bulb work. And it still got a filament in the light bulb. I said to those students, that's not theory. Those are critical race facts. And it's a fact that if we are going to make the progress we need to make to get to where we need to be in this country, we are going to have to develop the will to get outside of our comfort zones. Thomas Edison got outside of his comfort zone and sat down with this black guy up in Massachusetts who got outside of his comfort zone and allowed the meeting to take place. And together, they lit the world.
You give us hope, sir. You are a giant in our world, and on behalf of everybody sitting here, it is our distinct honor to have you here today, and my personal honor to sit with you today. So thank you. Thank you for everything.